The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the practice field behind Lincoln High into a swamp of red clay and standing water. Most students huddled under the covered walkways between classes, complaining about ruined shoes and frizzy hair. But for Maya Richardson, the storm was just another thing to endure in silence. She stood alone near the gym entrance, her backpack pulled tight against her chest like armor. The fabric was worn thin at the corners, patched with duct tape that had long since lost its stickiness. Inside were her textbooks, a water bottle she refilled at the fountain between classes, and a carefully folded piece of paper, her acceptance letter to Howard University, conditional on maintaining her grade point average and securing the remainder of her scholarship funding. Maya was 17, with dark brown skin that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the gray light filtering through the storm clouds. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail, practical and unadorned. She wore jeans that were slightly too short and a jacket that had belonged to her older brother before he shipped out with the Marines 2 years ago. The name tape still read Richardson in faded letters. She watched the other students pass by, in their designer rain boots and North Face jackets, laughing and shoving each other playfully. They moved in packs, secure in their numbers, comfortable in their belonging. Maya had learned not to want what they had. Wanting only made the distance more painful. "Yo, check it out," Salvation Army called. "They want their coat back." The voice belonged to Brandon Mitchell, 6 feet of entitled swagger wrapped in a Letterman jacket. He was flanked by his usual crew, Tyler, Jordan, and Marcus, all varsity football players whose fathers sat on the school board or owned the car dealerships downtown. Brandon's father was Judge Mitchell, a man whose name opened doors and closed cases throughout the county. Maya didn't respond. She had learned that silence was the safest response. Engagement only fed them. "I'm talking to you. Charity case," Brandon said, stepping closer. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with the metallic scent of rain. "You know, my dad says your kind should be grateful we even let you in here. This school's test scores were better before they started bussing in Brandon." The warning came from Coach Peters, who emerged from the gym with a whistle around his neck and a clipboard under his arm. "Move along." Brandon held Maya's gaze for a moment longer, his smile cold and calculated, before turning away with an exaggerated shrug. "Just being friendly, Coach. You know me." Maya knew him. Everyone knew Brandon Mitchell's star quarterback, homecoming king, untouchable. His cruelty had a surgical precision to it, always delivered where adults couldn't quite hear, always worded just carefully enough to maintain deniability. He had been making her life miserable since freshman year, when she had beaten him for the top score on the history midterm. The grudge had only deepened over time. "Coach." Peters waited until Brandon and his friends disappeared around the corner, then looked at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between pity and exhaustion. "You okay, Richardson?" "Yes, sir," Maya said, because what else could she say? He nodded slowly, unconvinced but unwilling to press. "Good. Get to class before the bell." Maya walked through the rain toward the main building, her sneakers squelching in the saturated grass. She thought about her mother, pulling a double shift at the hospital to cover the rent. She thought about her brother's last letter, written from somewhere he couldn't name, telling her to stay strong and stay focused. She thought about the acceptance letter in her bag and the $4,000 she still needed to raise before August. She thought about everything except the mud she was about to be pushed into, and the secret that would finally rise to the surface when she did. The chemistry lab smelled like sulfur and ammonia, a nauseating combination that made Maya's eyes water. She sat at the back table, as far from Brandon's group as the seating chart allowed, and tried to focus on Mr. Harrison's lecture about ionic bonds. Her notebook was filled with neat, careful handwriting, not because she was naturally organized, but because she couldn't afford to buy another one if she messed this one up. Now, I know we're all eager for spring break, Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his glasses. But first, we have the small matter of your lab practical. You'll be working in assigned pairs. A collective groan rose from the class. No one liked assigned pairs. It meant you couldn't choose your friends, couldn't coast on someone else's work. If you didn't feel like trying, Mr. Harrison ignored the complaints and began reading names from his list. Maya listened with half an ear, already resigned to being paired with whoever drew the short straw. Most students treated her like a ghost, not openly hostile like Brandon, but careful not to acknowledge her existence beyond what was absolutely necessary. Maya Richardson and Jenna Walsh. Maya's head snapped up. Jenna Walsh was Brandon's girlfriend, or rather one of his girlfriends, since Brandon seemed to collect and discard girls the way some people collected baseball cards. Jenna was blonde, petite, and always impeccably dressed in clothes that managed to look casual despite clearly costing hundreds of dollars. She was also, Maya had observed from a distance, surprisingly intelligent when she allowed herself to be. Jenna looked equally surprised by the pairing. She glanced over her shoulder at Maya, her expression unreadable, then turned back to whisper something to her friend in the next seat. Maya felt her stomach tighten. This was going to be a disaster. The bell rang, and students began shuffling out of the classroom. Maya gathered her things slowly, hoping to avoid having to walk anywhere near Jenna. But as she reached the door, she heard her name. Maya, wait up. She turned to find Jenna standing a few feet away, her designer bag slung over one shoulder. Up close, Maya could see the carefully applied makeup that concealed dark circles under Jenna's eyes. So, I guess we're partners, Jenna said, her tone neutral, not friendly, but not hostile either. I guess so, Maya replied carefully. Listen, I know this is probably weird for you, but I actually want to do well on this project. My dad's threatening to pull my college fund if I don't bring my science grade up. Jenna shifted her weight from one foot to the other, a gesture that seemed oddly vulnerable. Can we just work together like normal people? No drama? Maya studied her for a moment, searching for the trap. But Jenna's eyes held something that looked like genuine anxiety. Sure, Maya said finally. No drama. Cool. Library after school tomorrow? I have to catch the 5:15 bus. Right, okay. I can give you a ride home after. My car's. The library is fine, Maya interrupted, not wanting to owe this girl anything. I'll figure out the bus. Jenna nodded, looking relieved to have the conversation over. See you tomorrow. Maya watched her walk away, already regretting the agreement. Nothing good came from getting close to people in Brandon Mitchell's orbit. They were like planets trapped by his gravity, and he had a way of using everyone around him as weapons. But she needed the grade. And maybe, just maybe, Jenna Walsh was different when Brandon wasn't watching. The next afternoon, Maya arrived at the library 10 minutes early, a habit ingrained by her mother's constant reminder that on time is late. She claimed a table in the back corner, spread out her textbook and notes, and tried to ignore the curious looks from students who weren't used to seeing her anywhere, except silently taking up space in classrooms. Jenna arrived exactly on time, carrying a leather-bound planner and an expensive-looking laptop. She slid into the seat across from Maya without preamble. Okay, so I was thinking we could split the research. I'll take the experimental design. You take the literature review? That works, Maya said. They worked in silence for nearly 20 minutes. The only sounds the scratch of Maya's pencil and the soft clicking of Jenna's keyboard. It was almost peaceful. Then Jenna's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and typed a quick response. It buzzed again. And again. Sorry, Jenna muttered, silencing the phone. Brandon's being Brandon. Maya said nothing, but she felt the atmosphere shift. Brandon Mitchell was in the room now, even if only virtually, and his presence contaminated everything. Jenna stared at her blank laptop screen for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Can I ask you something? And please don't take this the wrong way." Maya's guard went up immediately. "Nothing good ever followed. Don't take this the wrong way. Why do you let him get away with it? The things he says to you?" The question landed like a slap. Maya's hand stilled on her notebook. "Let him?" "I just mean," Jenna backtracked, realizing she'd stepped into dangerous territory. "You're smart. Like, really smart. I've seen you and Pei, you're not weak. So why don't you ever fight back?" Maya closed her textbook carefully, buying time to control her anger. When she spoke, her voice was measured and cold. "You think I don't fight back because I'm weak?" "No, I didn't mean. You know what takes more strength than punching someone?" Man interrupted. "Showing up every day to a place where people treat you like garbage. Maintaining a 4.0 while working 20 hours a week at the grocery store. Keeping your mouth shut when some entitled jock says your kind doesn't belong here, because you know if you react, you're the one who'll get expelled." Jenna's face had gone pale. "Maya, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You asked me why I don't fight back. It's because I'm fighting a war, Jenna, and you don't win wars by engaging in every single battle." Maya stood up, gathering her things. "I'll finish the literature review on my own. Send me your part, and I'll integrate it. We don't have to do this together. Please don't go." Jenna's voice cracked slightly. "You're right. I was being stupid and insensitive. She paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "I know what it's like. Not the same way you do, but Brandon's not the person everyone thinks he is. He's not the person I thought he was when we started dating." Maya paused, her backpack halfway onto her shoulder. Something in Jenna's voice made her sit back down. Jenna was staring at the table, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. "Last month, we were at Tyler's party. I was talking to this guy from my English class. Just talking about homework, and Brandon pulled me aside after. He didn't yell. He just grabbed my arm really tight and told me if I embarrassed him like that again, everyone would know what kind of girl I really was." She looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "He has pictures, Maya, from when we first started dating. I thought I loved him. I thought sharing those pictures meant we trusted each other." The pieces clicked into place in Maya's mind. Brandon's control wasn't just about physical intimidation. It was about leverage, about collecting people's vulnerabilities and using them as insurance. "Have you told anyone?" Maya asked quietly. "Who would I tell?" "His dad's a judge. My dad works for his dad's law firm. Everyone loves Brandon Mitchell, star athlete, honor roll student, future politician." Jenna laughed bitterly. "And even if someone believed me, those pictures would end up everywhere. I'd be the girl who ruined the golden boy's life. Or worse, the girl stupid enough to take the pictures in the first place." They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside the library windows, the rain had started again, drumming against the glass like 1,000 impatient fingers. "I'm sorry," Jenna whispered. "For what he says to you. For what I've let him say without stopping him. I'm a coward." "You're scared," Maya corrected. "That's different." She pulled her notebook back open. "Let's just finish this project. And Jenna, delete those pictures from your phone. All of them. Don't give him anything else to use against you." Jenna nodded slowly, pulling her laptop back toward her. They worked in silence for another hour, but something had shifted between them. Not friendship exactly. That was too dangerous, too complicated. But understanding. Recognition that they were both trapped in Brandon Mitchell's web, fighting their own wars of survival. When they finally packed up to leave, Jenna touched Maya's arm gently. "Thank you for listening. Maya nodded but didn't smile. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, even with someone who seemed to understand. Brandon Mitchell had taught her that the friendliest faces could hide the sharpest knives. But as she walked to the bus stop through the rain, she allowed herself the smallest hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The rumor started on Monday morning, spreading through the hallways of Lincoln High like poison through a water supply. By second period, everyone knew. By lunch, it had taken on a life of its own, mutating and growing with each retelling. Maya Richardson had thrown herself at Brandon Mitchell at a party over the weekend. She'd shown up uninvited, gotten drunk, and tried to force herself on him. When he rejected her kindly because Brandon was such a nice guy, she'd threatened to make up stories about him. She was obsessed with him, desperate for his attention. Pathetic dot, none of it was true. Maya had spent the weekend exactly as she spent most weekends, working her shift at Patterson's grocery, studying, and helping her mother prepare for her nursing certification exam. She hadn't been to a party in her life. She had no interest in Brandon Mitchell beyond staying as far away from him as possible. But truth didn't matter when Brandon Mitchell decided to rewrite it. She first realized something was wrong when she walked into her morning calculus class and felt the weight of 30 pairs of eyes turn toward her simultaneously. The whispers started immediately, soft, hissing sounds that made her skin crawl. Someone laughed. Someone else muttered a word she pretended not to hear. By the time she reached her seat, her hands were shaking. Rough weekend? Brandon's voice came from behind her, syrupy with false concern. You look tired, Maya. Maybe you should learn to handle your alcohol better. Maya gripped the edge of her desk, forcing herself not to turn around, not to engage, not to give him what he wanted. But Brandon wasn't finished. I felt bad saying no, honestly. But you understand, I have standards. No offense. Laughter rippled through the classroom. Maya felt her face burning, felt the familiar sting of humiliation settling into her bones like arthritis. She stared at the board, at the quadratic equations written in Mr. Chun's neat handwriting, and tried to remember how to breathe. The teacher walked in, and the room fell silent. Maya made it through the class by sheer force of will, taking notes mechanically, raising her hand for none of the questions she knew the answers to. When the bell finally rang, she was the first one out the door. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. The stalls were empty. Thank God. She locked herself in the furthest one and pressed her forehead against the cool metal door, trying to get her breathing under control. This wasn't the first time Brandon had targeted her, but it was the most public, the most vicious. And the cruelest part was knowing that no one would believe her denial. Her word against his was no contest. A scholarship student from the East Side versus the judge's son. She heard the bathroom door open and quickly wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. Footsteps approached her stall. Maya? I know you're in there. It was Jenna's voice. Maya didn't answer. Please. I just want to talk. Go away, Jenna. I know what Brandon did. I know he's lying. Maya laughed bitterly. Knowing doesn't change anything. Maybe not. But I can tell people the truth. I can tell them I was with you. Don't. Maya finally opened the stall door. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Don't lie for me. It'll just make it worse. Jenna looked stricken. She was holding her phone, her knuckles white around it. I should have warned you. I should have known he'd do something like this after. She stopped abruptly. After what? Jenna bit her lip, debating something internal. Finally, she pulled up something on her phone and showed it to Maya. It was a text thread between her and Brandon from Friday night. Brandon, that scholarship girl you're working with needs to learn her place. Jenna, what are you talking about? Brandon, just saying. Some people need to remember they're only here because we let them be here. Jenna, Brandon, that's messed up. Maya's actually really smart. Brandon, oh really? You like her better than me now? Is that what this is? Jenna, don't be ridiculous. Brandon, then prove it. Unless you want everyone to see those pics we talked about. The conversation ended there. Maya looked up at Jenna, understanding clicking into place. He started this rumor because you defended me. He's punishing us both, Jenna confirmed, her voice hollow. You for existing. Me for stepping out of line. Maya handed the phone back. You should delete these messages. Or I could show them to someone. Principal Harris, maybe. And say what? That your boyfriend is controlling? That he pressured you? You think that'll end well for either of us? Maya shook her head. The system protects people like Brandon. It always has. They stood in the fluorescent-lit bathroom, two girls from different worlds united by the same predator. Outside, the warning bell rang for next period. I have to get to class, Maya said, shouldering her backpack. Maya, wait. Jenna reached out but didn't quite touch her. I'm sorry. For all of it. Me too, Maya said. And she meant it, not just sorry for her own situation, but sorry for Jenna. Sorry for every girl who'd ever been trapped by a boy, who mistook cruelty for power. She left Jenna standing there and walked into the hallway, where the whispers and stares were waiting like a gauntlet she had to run. She held her head high, even as she heard the words they were calling her. Even as she saw the teachers look away, unwilling to get involved in teenage drama. She made it through the day by becoming invisible again, by retreating so far into herself that nothing could touch her. But that night, alone in her room, she allowed herself to cry. She cried for the injustice of it, for the loneliness, for the weight of always having to be strong when she just wanted to be 17 and normal and allowed to make mistakes without them being weaponized against her. And then, when the tears were done, she made a decision. Brandon Mitchell wanted a war? Fine. But he was about to learn that some battles weren't fought with words and rumors. Some battles required patience, strategy, and the willingness to strike when your enemy least expected it. Maya pulled out her laptop and began to document everything. Every incident. Every witness. Every text message Jenna had shown her. If this was war, she would need evidence. She would need proof. And when the time came, she would need to be ready to fight back in a way that Brandon Mitchell never saw coming. By Thursday, the rumor had grown teeth. Maya's locker had been vandalized twice, first with a crude drawing, then with words spray-painted in red that maintenance had to scrub off. She found notes shoved through the vents. Slut. Desperate. Go back where you came from. She collected them all, photographed them, dated them, added them to her growing file. The athletic period was mandatory for all students, a state requirement disguised as character building. Maya usually spent it running laps alone while the popular kids played elaborate games of volleyball or basketball, segregated by social hierarchy as much as by skill. But today, Coach Reynolds had other plans. Everyone outside. He barked, immune to the groans of protest. Track and field assessment. I want to see who's been keeping up with their cardio over winter. The sky was the color of old bruises, heavy with the promise of more rain. The track circled the football field, 8 lanes of weathered rubber that squelched underfoot from days of moisture. Maya joined the reluctant migration outside, pulling her brother's jacket tighter against the wind. Richardson, Coach Reynolds called. You're in Heat 3, Lane 4. She nodded, trying to ignore the snickers from Brandon's group. They were clustered near the bleachers, supposedly stretching but mostly just watching, and commenting on everyone who passed by. The first 2 heats ran without incident. Maya watched the other students sprint around the track with varying degrees of effort. Some were genuine athletes, moving with practiced grace. Others clearly hadn't run anywhere except to their cars in months. Heat 3, take your marks. Coach Reynolds shouted through his bullhorn. Maya crouched at the starting line, focusing on the red clay oval ahead. Beside her in lane 3 was Tyler Barnes, one of Brandon's lieutenants. In lane 5 was Keisha Johnson, a junior Maya recognized from English class, but had never spoken to. The starting whistle blew. Maya launched forward, her legs remembering the rhythm even if her lungs protested. She wasn't fast, she'd never been naturally athletic, but she was determined. The wind whipped her ponytail back, and for a few precious seconds, she forgot about everything except the simple act of movement. She was halfway around the first curve when she heard Brandon's voice carry across the field. "Yo, Tyler, make sure you wash your hands after. You know scholarship germs are contagious." Laughter erupted from the bleachers. Maya's concentration faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. Her foot landed wrong on the wet track surface. She stumbled, caught herself, kept running. "Don't let her touch you, man. My dad says they carry diseases." More laughter. Coach Reynolds blew his whistle. "Mitchell, run laps or shut it." But the damage was done. Maya's rhythm was broken, her breathing ragged with something that wasn't exertion. She finished the lap in the middle of the pack and bent over at the finish line, hands on her knees, trying to get air into her lungs. "Pathetic," someone muttered as they jogged past. Maya straightened up and walked toward the water fountain, wanting to be alone. But Brandon had other ideas. He peeled away from his group and jogged up beside her, matching her pace with that infuriating casual ease. "Hey, Maya," he said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "No hard feelings about the party thing, right? I get it, crush culture and all that. But maybe next time read the room, you know? Some people are just out of your league." Maya stopped walking. She turned to face him, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked him directly in the eyes. Up close, she could see the calculation behind his friendly smile, the way he positioned himself to block her from moving without making it obvious. The performance he was putting on for their audience. "I wasn't at any party," Maya said quietly. "You know I wasn't. You made it up." Brandon's smile never wavered. "Is that really the story you're going with? Because I have like 6 witnesses who saw you there." "Lying witnesses." Or, Brandon leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "You're just salty because someone finally called you out for trying to climb above your station. This school was fine before they started bussing in scholarship trash. You should be grateful we even let you sit in our classrooms." Something inside Maya snapped. Not into rage, not into tears, into perfect, crystalline clarity. "You think you're untouchable," she said softly. "You think your daddy's name and your football scholarships make you a king. But kingdoms fall, Brandon. And when yours does, I'm going to be there to watch." For just a second, something flickered in Brandon's eyes, surprise, maybe, or the first hint of uncertainty. But then his mask slid back into place. Big talk from someone who's one expulsion away from the streets. "Be careful, Maya. Accidents happen all the time." He walked away, his laughter carrying back to her on the window. Maya stood there, her hands clenched into fists inside her jacket pockets, and felt the rain begin to fall. The other students hurried toward the covered walkways, but she didn't move. She let the rain soak into her hair, her clothes, her skin. Coach Reynolds blew his whistle. "Everyone back to the gym. This session's canceled." But Maya didn't go to the gym. She walked to the far side of the practice field, where the ground sloped down toward the drainage creek. The mud was ankle-deep here, churned up by days of rain. She stood at the edge of it, staring at the murky water, and thought about what Brandon had said. Accidents happen all the time. It wasn't a statement. It was a threat. And Maya Richardson had learned enough about the predators of the world to know when one was preparing to strike. She pulled out her phone. scrolled to a number she hadn't called in months, and typed a message. Maya, Uncle James, I need your help. Can we talk? The response came almost immediately. Uncle James, name the time and place, kiddo. I'm here. Maya pocketed her phone and walked back through the rain. Her sneakers were caked with mud, her jacket soaked through. But her mind was clearer than it had been in days. Brandon Mitchell thought he knew who she was, a scared scholarship student who would take whatever abuse he dished out until she finally broke and left. He thought he had all the power, but Brandon Mitchell had never met James Richardson, former Marine Corps close combat instructor, now teaching self-defense at the community center downtown. He'd never seen Maya training in his basement dojo since she was 12 years old, learning discipline and control alongside the punches and kicks. Brandon thought she was helpless because she'd chosen not to fight back. He was about to learn the difference between choosing not to fight and not knowing how. The storm broke on Friday afternoon with the kind of violence that made people check their phones for tornado warnings. The sky turned the color of a fresh bruise, and the wind howled through the trees surrounding Lincoln High's practice facilities. Most students were already gone, released early due to the weather advisory. But Coach Reynolds had decided that the football team needed one more practice before the weekend. Weather be damned, thought Maya had stayed late to finish her biology makeup test, which meant she missed her usual bus. The next one wouldn't come for another 40 minutes. So she settled into the library with her calculus homework, trying to ignore the thunder rattling the windows. At 4:30, the library aide announced closing time. Maya packed up her things and headed for the front entrance, only to find it locked, all main doors sealed due to the storm. With students and remaining staff directed to exit through the gym complex, she sighed and redirected toward the athletic wing, her backpack heavy with textbooks. The hallways were mostly empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Through the windows, she could see the practice field already flooding, water pooling in the low spots between the goalposts. The gym doors opened into chaos. Football players in various states of undress, towels snapping, someone's music blasting from a portable speaker. Maya kept her head down and moved quickly toward the far exit that led to the student parking lot. She almost made it. Well, Brandon's voice stopped her cold. Look who's sneaking around the boys' locker room. Maya didn't turn around. I'm not sneaking. I'm leaving. Main entrance is locked. Sure. Brandon stepped into her path, flanked by Tyler and Marcus, all three of them in practice gear, muddy and sweating. Or maybe you're looking for round 2? Can't take a hint? Other players were tuning in now, forming a casual semicircle that blocked Maya's route to the exit. Coach Reynolds was nowhere to be seen, probably in his office, reviewing game footage. Move, Maya said flatly. Make me, Brandon countered. Then, louder, to his audience. Seriously, this is getting stalkerish. I already told you I'm not interested. What part of out of your league don't you understand? Laughter rippled through the group. Maya felt the familiar heat of humiliation rising in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. I'm not interested in you, Brandon. I never was. This is pathetic. Pathetic? Brandon's smile sharpened. Says the girl who has to take charity just to afford notebooks. You know what's pathetic, Maya? Thinking you belong here. Thinking you're one of us just because they let you in the building. He stepped closer, and Maya caught the scent of his cologne mixed with sweat. She stood her ground, meeting his eyes with a calm that clearly unsettled him. You're afraid of me, she said suddenly, the realization hitting her as she spoke. That's what this is about. You're afraid that if people see me succeed, they'll realize you're not special. You're just lucky. Brandon's face darkened. Big words from a what, Brandon? Say it. Say what you're really thinking. Or are you afraid Daddy Judge won't appreciate his son getting caught being racist? The gym went silent. Maya had crossed a line, had named a thing that everyone knew but no one acknowledged. She saw a rage flash across Brandon's face, saw his hand clench into a fist. "You need to learn some respect," he said quietly. "Respect is earned, not inherited." What happened next happened fast. Brandon grabbed Maya's backpack and yanked, hard enough to pull her off balance. Her calculus book fell out, papers scattering across the wet floor. When she bent to gather them, Brandon kicked the book away, sending it skidding toward a muddy puddle near the door. "Oops," he said, his voice dripping with false innocence. "Butterfingers." Maya straightened slowly. Her paper, her calculus homework that was worth 20% of her final grade, was soaking in dirty water. 3 weeks of work, ruined in seconds. She looked at Brandon, then at the other players watching. None of them were laughing anymore. A few looked uncomfortable, but none of them moved to help her. "You're going to pay for that," Maya said softly. Brandon laughed. "Yeah, you in what army?" He shoved her shoulder, not hard enough to really hurt, but hard enough to make his point. "You're nothing, Maya. You'll always be nothing. Now get out of my sight before I really lose my temper." Maya picked up her ruined homework, carefully placing the wet pages in her backpack. She gathered her other books, moving deliberately, refusing to be rushed. When she had everything, she stood up and walked toward the exit, her spine straight. Her head high behind her, she heard Brandon mutter, "Stuck-up bitch." She pushed through the door into the storm. The rain hit her immediately, soaking through her jacket in seconds. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet. But she didn't care. She walked across the parking lot toward the practice field, where the mud was deepest, where the storm was loudest. She needed space. She needed to breathe. She needed to remember who she was before she did something she'd regret. She made it about 50 yards before she heard the footsteps behind her. "Maya!" "Stop!" It was Jenna's voice, barely audible over the wind. Maya turned to see her running through the rain, her blonde hair plastered to her face, mascara already running. "What are you doing out here?" Jenna gasped. "It's dangerous. I needed air." "Brandon's an asshole." "I'm sorry about your homework. It's not about the homework, Jenna." Maya's voice was tired. "It's about every day. Every class. Every hallway. I'm so tired of being his punching bag." "I know. I'm sorry." I should have, or whatever Jenna was about to say was cut off by the sound of more voices. Maya turned to see Brandon and his crew emerging from the gym, still in their practice gear, running toward them through the rain. "Oh God," Jenna breathed. "He's really mad." They reached Maya and Jenna within seconds, Brandon leading the pack. His face was twisted with something beyond anger. It was the rage of someone who'd been challenged and needed to reassert his dominance. "You think you're smart?" Brandon yelled over the wind. "You think you can talk to me like that in front of my team?" "Leave her alone, Brandon," Jenna tried, stepping between them. Brandon shoved her aside without even looking at her. "This doesn't concern you, Jenna." He grabbed Maya's backpack straps and pulled, yanking her toward him. Maya felt her feet sliding in the mud, felt herself losing balance on the slick grass. "Let go of me," she said firmly. "Make me." It was the wrong thing to say, because somewhere deep in Maya Richardson's bones, in the muscle memory built from thousands of hours in her uncle's dojo, something finally unlocked. She'd spent years learning to control her strength, to channel her anger, to defend without destroying. She'd been taught that fighting was the last resort, that violence solved nothing, but she'd also been taught that there comes a moment when you have to stand your ground, when choosing not to fight becomes choosing to be a victim. Brandon pulled harder, trying to force her to her knees in the mud. "Where's all that attitude now? Maya's response was instantaneous and precise. She stepped into his pull instead of resisting it, using his own momentum against him. Her hands came up in a controlled motion, breaking his grip on her backpack. Before he could react, she had twisted his wrist into a textbook wrist lock, applying just enough pressure to make him gasp. "Let go," she said calmly. Brandon tried to pull away, but the physics were against him. The harder he pulled, the more pressure she applied to the joint. "You're crazy," he shouted. "No, I'm trained." Maya released him and stepped back, assuming a ready stance, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, hands up but open. "Walk away, Brandon." The other players had stopped in their tracks, stunned. Brandon clutched his wrist, staring at Maya like he was seeing her for the first time. "You think you're tough?" he snarled. "Fine. Let's see how tough you really are." He charged forward, telegraphing his intention by a full second. Exactly the kind of wild, angry attack that was easy to counter if you knew how. Maya waited until the last moment, then sidestepped smoothly. Brandon's momentum carried him past her, and she helped him along with a gentle push to his shoulder. He went down hard in the mud, sprawling face first into the muck. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the rain and Tyler's shocked "Holy shit." Brandon scrambled to his feet, his practice jersey covered in red clay, his face a mask of humiliation and fury. "You're dead," he screamed. "You're so fucking dead." He came at her again, and this time Maya didn't just redirect, she defended. A textbook block followed by a controlled strike to his solar plexus, just hard enough to wind him. Brandon dropped to his knees, gasping. "Stay down," Maya said quietly. But Brandon had never been taught to stay down. His entire life, he'd been told he was the winner, the champion, the one who always came out on top. He couldn't process this reversal, couldn't accept that a scholarship student, a girl, had just humiliated him in front of his team. He lunged for her legs, trying to tackle her. Maya's response was automatic, a knee strike that caught him in the shoulder, followed by a sweep that took his feet out from under him. Brandon went down again, harder this time, and this time he didn't get up immediately. Around them, the other players stood frozen. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. Tyler was actually smiling, though he hid it quickly when Brandon looked up. "Somebody help me!" Brandon yelled, but nobody moved. Maya stood in the rain, breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She wasn't hurt. She wasn't even particularly tired. Years of training had prepared her for exactly this moment, and her body had responded the way her uncle had taught her, with control, precision, and just enough force to defend herself without causing serious injury. Brandon finally got to his feet, mud dripping from his clothes and hair. He looked around at his friends, at Jenna, who was staring at Maya with wide eyes, at the entire scene that had just dismantled his carefully constructed kingdom. "This isn't over," he said, his voice shaking with impotent rage. "You just assaulted me. My dad's a judge. You're finished." "I defended myself," Maya corrected, "against someone who grabbed me first, in front of witnesses." She looked around at the other players, meeting their eyes one by one. "Anyone here see it differently?" No one spoke. Even Tyler, Brandon's closest friend, was studiously examining the mud on his cleats, Brandon's face contorted with disbelief and fury. "You're all traitors. Every single one of you." He turned and stormed off toward the parking lot, his remaining dignity in tatters. Tyler and Marcus hesitated, then followed him, leaving Maya standing alone with Jenna in the rain. "Oh my God," Jenna breathed. "Where did you learn to do that?" "My uncle has been teaching me since I was 12. Maya picked up her backpack, checking to make sure nothing else had fallen out. "I just never had a reason to use it before." "You were amazing." "Did you see his face when you—" Jenna stopped, her smile fading. "Oh no, Maya, he's going to come after you for this." His ego won't let him let it go. Let him try. Maya's voice was calm but firm. I'm done being afraid of Brandon Mitchell. They walked back toward the building together. Two girls soaked through by the storm, but somehow standing taller than before. Behind them, the practice field was empty, except for the rain washing away the evidence of what had happened. The mud. The footprints, the place where a bully had finally been put in his place. But Maya knew Jenna was right. This wasn't over. Brandon Mitchell wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. He would retaliate, probably in a way designed to destroy her completely. Let him try. She thought again, feeling the weight of her uncle's training in her bones. She'd spent 3 years being invisible, being a victim, accepting abuse because fighting back seemed impossible, but impossible was just another word for difficult. And Maya Richardson had never shied away from difficult. The consequences came faster than Maya expected. By Monday morning, the entire school knew what had happened on the practice field. The story had spread with the kind of velocity that only scandal could achieve, whispered in hallways, texted between classes, dissected at lunch tables. But the narrative wasn't what Maya had hoped, according to the version making the rounds. Maya Richardson had attacked Brandon Mitchell without provocation. She'd used dangerous martial arts moves on him, putting him in the hospital with a concussion and a separated shoulder. She was violent, unstable, potentially dangerous to other students. Some versions even claimed she'd been training specifically to attack him, that she'd been planning it for weeks. None of it was true. Brandon had shown up to school Monday morning with his arm in a sling, purely theatrical. Maya was certain, and a carefully practiced expression of wounded nobility. He'd held court by his locker, surrounded by sympathetic friends and concerned teachers, playing the victim with Oscar-worthy conviction. Maya had arrived to find her own locker covered in hateful messages. Security photos from the incident had somehow leaked carefully edited photos that showed only Maya's defensive strikes, not Brandon's initial attacks. The images made her look aggressive, dangerous. By third period, she'd been called to Principal Harris's office. She sat now in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs opposite the principal's massive desk, her backpack at her feet, her hands folded in her lap. Principal Harris was a thin man in his 50s with nervous energy that manifested in constant fidgeting, adjusting his glasses, shuffling papers, clicking his pen. Maya, he began, his tone attempting sympathy but achieving only condescension. I want you to understand that we take all allegations of violence very seriously at Lincoln High. I was defending myself, Maya said clearly. Brandon grabbed me first. Yes, well, that's your version of events. But we have several witnesses who say otherwise. And we have these security photos. He turned his computer monitor toward her, showing the edited images, which seemed to show you initiating the conflict. Those photos are taken out of context. Where are the ones showing him grabbing my backpack? Pushing Jenna? Coming at me? Principal Harris shifted uncomfortably. The security system has been having issues. Some footage was corrupted. How convenient. Maya, I understand you're upset, but you have to see this from our perspective. Brandon Mitchell is an honor student, a varsity athlete with no history of violence. You, on the other hand, he paused delicately. I what? I'm poor? I'm black? I'm here on scholarship? Maya's voice remained level, but her eyes were hard. Say what you're really thinking, Principal Harris. He had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. I'm thinking that you've been under a lot of pressure. Financial stress, academic pressure to maintain your scholarship. Sometimes that kind of stress can cause people to snap, to act out in ways they normally wouldn't. I didn't act out. I defended myself against someone who's been harassing me for 3 years. Do you have documentation of this harassment? Maya opened her backpack and pulled out a folder thick with printed screenshots. Dated notes, photos of her vandalized locker. She'd been preparing for exactly this moment. Principal Harris barely glanced at it before sliding it back across the desk. I see. Well, unfortunately, none of this is admissible as evidence. These are just your personal records. Without corroborating witnesses or official reports filed at the time of the incidents, I tried to file reports. I was told it was just teenage drama, that I was being too sensitive. Maya leaned forward. You know what's happening here. You know, Brandon's the one who's been bullying people for years. But his father donates to this school. His family has connections. So you're going to protect him and sacrifice me. That's not Maya. That's an unfair characterization. Is it? Then explain why you're not questioning the edited security footage. Explain why you haven't interviewed the other witnesses who were there. Explain why I'm the one in your office when I'm the victim. Principal Harris's expression hardened. You're in my office because you put another student in the hospital, Miss Richardson. And I'm trying to help you. If you cooperate, if you agree to a suspension and anger management counseling, we might be able to avoid expulsion. The word hung in the air between them, expulsion. The end of everything Maya had worked for. No diploma. No college. No scholarship. No future. And if I don't cooperate? Maya asked quietly. Then I have no choice but to recommend your permanent removal from Lincoln High, along with a formal report to the district that can affect your ability to enroll elsewhere. He softened his voice again, trying for fatherly concern. Maya, you're a smart girl. Don't throw away your future over this. Maya stood up, gathering her things. My future is already being thrown away, Principal Harris. Just not by me. She walked out of his office with her head high, even as she felt the walls closing in. In the hallway outside, she nearly collided with someone waiting by the door. It was Jenna, her face pale and anxious. I heard. I'm so sorry. Did you tell him what really happened? Maya interrupted. Jenna's silence was answer enough. He threatened you, Maya guessed. The pictures. He said if I testified for you, he'd post them everywhere. And he'd make sure everyone knew I helped you ambush him. He said I'd never get into any decent college with that kind of record. Jenna's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I know I'm a coward. I know I should stand up for you. But I can't. I just can't. It's okay, Maya said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Jenna was a victim too. Just a different kind. I understand. What are you going to do? Maya looked down at the folder in her hands, all her carefully documented evidence, worthless without someone willing to back it up. I don't know yet, but I'm not going down without a fight. She left Jenna standing there and walked toward her locker, her mind racing. She needed a new strategy. The system wasn't going to save her, that much was clear. Principal Harris was either too scared or too corrupt to stand up to the Mitchell family. The security footage had been conveniently edited. The witnesses were too terrified to speak up. She was alone, but alone didn't mean helpless. It just meant she had to be smarter, more strategic. She had to find leverage that even Brandon's father couldn't dismiss. Maya opened her locker and found another note shoved through the vent. Violent thug. We don't want your kind here. She photographed it, added it to her collection, and closed her locker. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call she'd been putting off for years. Richardson and Associates. How may I help you? I need to speak with Attorney Richardson. Tell him it's his niece Maya. Her uncle James had taught her how to defend her body. But his older brother Martin, the civil rights lawyer who'd been trying to get Maya to let him help for years, was about to teach her how to defend something even more valuable. Her future. If Brandon Mitchell wanted to destroy her, he was going to have to go through a federal civil rights lawsuit to do it. And Maya Richardson was just getting started. The office of Richardson and Associates occupied the third floor of a modest building in downtown Richmond, 20 minutes from Lincoln High by bus. Maya had been here only once before, at 12 years old, when her Uncle Martin had tried to explain what he did for a living. She remembered being intimidated by the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal tomes. The framed degrees, the photographs of her uncle shaking hands with senators and civil rights leaders. Now, sitting across from him in one of the leather chairs reserved for clients, she felt less intimidated and more desperate. Martin Richardson was 52, with graying hair and the kind of calm, measured presence that came from decades in courtrooms. He listened without interrupting as Maya walked him through everything. The years of harassment, the escalating bullying, the edited security footage, Principal Harris's ultimatum. She showed him her documentation, the photos, the messages. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers beneath his chin. "This is bad, Maya," he said finally. "But it's also textbook." Textbook what? Institutional racism and sex discrimination under Title VI and Title X. Selective enforcement of discipline. Creation of a hostile educational environment. Retaliation against a victim who defended herself. He picked up one of her photos, the one showing the racial slur spray-painted on her locker. "And this is a potential hate crime. Can you help me?" "I can do better than help you. I can make sure this school district remembers your name for the next 20 years. He pulled out a yellow legal pad and began making notes. "First, we're filing an emergency injunction to prevent your suspension or expulsion pending investigation. Second, we're filing formal complaints with the Office of Civil Rights and the State Department of Education. Third," he looked up at her, "we're suing the school, the district, Principal Harris personally, and Brandon Mitchell and his father." Maya felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. "Can we win?" "Winning isn't just about money, Maya. It's about forcing change. But yes, with your documentation and the right witnesses, we can absolutely win." He paused. "However, you need to understand what you're signing up for. This will get ugly. The Mitchells will come at you with everything they have. Your life will be examined under a microscope. And Lincoln High will do everything possible to protect themselves, which means they'll try to destroy your credibility. They're already doing that. It'll get worse before it gets better." Maya thought about her mother, working double shifts just to keep them afloat. She thought about her brother overseas, fighting for a country that didn't always fight for people like them. She thought about every student at Lincoln, who'd ever been bullied by someone with money and power and no accountability. "I'm not afraid of worse," Maya said. "I'm afraid of giving up." Martin smiled a real smile that reminded her suddenly of her father, the brother she'd lost too young. "That's the Richardson stubbornness. Okay, let's do this." He pressed the intercom on his desk. "Susan, can you come in here? I need you to start drawing up emergency motions." Over the next 2 hours, Maya watched her uncle and his paralegal work with military precision. Documents were drafted, evidence was logged, phone calls were made to contacts at the Department of Education and local news outlets. Martin explained each step, making sure Maya understood what was happening and why. "The key is momentum," he told her. "Right now, the school thinks they can quietly push you out. We're going to make noise. Loud, public, impossible to ignore noise." By the time Maya left the office, the first lawsuit had been filed electronically with the court. Her uncle walked her to the bus stop, his hand on her shoulder. "You're brave, Maya. Your parents would be proud. I just don't want to be a victim anymore." "You never were a victim. You were just waiting for the right moment to fight back." He squeezed her shoulder. "Now go home, do your homework, and let me handle the legal warfare. Your job is to be a student. My job is to be a shark." Maya boarded the bus, and as it pulled away from the curb, she watched her uncle standing there, a soldier of a different kind, armed with law books instead of weapons, but no less dangerous to those who abuse their power. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Brandon's freaking out. Heard his dad got served with papers. What did you do? Maya smiled for the first time in days and typed back. I hired a lawyer. A good one. The response was almost immediate. Oh my God. He's going to kill you. He can try, Maya wrote. But now he's fighting a different kind of battle. And in this one, he doesn't get to make the rules. She put her phone away and watched the city roll past the bus. Windows, the neighborhoods getting progressively poorer as they moved from downtown to the east side. The familiar landscape of her actual life. But instead of feeling defeated by the contrast, Maya felt something else. Power. Not the kind of power Brandon wielded borrowed from his father's position and money. Real power. The power that came from refusing to be broken. From standing up, even when standing up might cost you everything. Her uncle was right. This would get worse before it got better. Brandon and his father wouldn't go down without a fight. They'd dig into her past, her family, every mistake she'd ever made. They'd try to paint her as the villain in a story, where she was actually the hero. But Maya had something they didn't have, the truth. And the truth, her father used to say, was the most powerful weapon in the world, as long as you had the courage to wield it. She got off the bus at her stop and walked the 3 blocks to her apartment complex. Her mother was already home from her day shift, cooking dinner and studying her nursing textbooks at the same time. How was your day, baby? Elena Richardson asked, not looking up from her medical terminology flashcards. Maya thought about everything that had happened, the meeting with Principal Harris, the hate messages, the lawsuit her uncle was filing, the war she'd just declared on one of the most powerful families in the county. It was good, Mama, she said. Really good. Because for the first time in 3 years, Maya Richardson was fighting back. And she intended to win. The news broke on Wednesday morning. And it broke big. Local student sues school district. Claims racial discrimination and systematic bullying. Headline ran in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, accompanied by a carefully worded article that laid out the basic facts of Maya's case without naming her directly, as she was a minor. But anyone at Lincoln High knew exactly who was about. By the time Maya arrived at school, her uncle had successfully blocked a suspension pending investigation. The atmosphere had changed. Students stared openly now, no longer bothering to whisper. Some expressions were hostile. Others were curious. A few, surprisingly, looked impressed. Maya! Maya! A junior she didn't know ran up to her in the hallway. Is it true you're suing Brandon Mitchell? I can't comment on ongoing litigation, Maya said, repeating the phrase her uncle had drilled into her. But you totally kicked his ass on the practice field, right? Someone recorded part of it on their phone. I defended myself within my legal rights. The junior grinned. That's so badass. It was a small moment, but it represented something significant. The narrative was shifting. Maya wasn't just a troublemaker attacking an innocent athlete. She was the underdog fighting back against a bully. And people loved an underdog story. But not everyone was on her side. In first period English, she found her desk had been pushed into the far corner, isolated from the rest of the class. Mrs. Patterson, the teacher, avoided her eyes. I thought it would be better for everyone if you had some space, Mrs. Patterson said when Maya asked about it. Less distracting. Code for. The other parents complained about their children being near the violent student. Maya took her isolated seat without argument. She'd expected this, the quiet ways the school would try to make her unwelcome, to pressure her into leaving voluntarily so they wouldn't have to formally expel her. But she'd underestimated how quickly her uncle could work. During second period, an announcement crackled over the PA system. All teachers and administrative staff are to report to an emergency assembly during lunch period. Students will have extended study hall. The whispers started immediately. Emergency assemblies were rare, usually reserved for serious incidents or major changes in school policy. Maya had a pretty good idea what this one was about. At lunch, instead of going to the cafeteria, Maya found a quiet corner of the library and pulled out her phone. She had 3 texts from her uncle. Uncle Martin, federal investigators are on campus today. Just a courtesy visit to inform the school that an official inquiry has been opened. Uncle Martin. Also, I may have leaked the story to 3 more news outlets. Hope you don't mind. Uncle Martin. You're trending on local Twitter. Hashtag justice for Maya is apparently a thing now. Maya couldn't help but smile. Her uncle fought dirty when he needed to, and right now, she needed him to fight very dirty indeed. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was Jenna. Can we talk? Please? It's important. Maya hesitated, then typed back. Library. 3rd floor. 10 minutes later, Jenna appeared, looking nervous and exhausted. She slid into the chair across from Maya and immediately burst into tears. I can't do this anymore, Jenna sobbed. I can't keep lying. I can't keep protecting him. Maya pushed a box of tissues across the table. What happened? He hit me. Last night. We were at his house, and I told him I thought he should settle your lawsuit. Just apologize and move on. He said I was a traitor, that I was choosing you over him. Jenna pulled down the collar of her shirt slightly, revealing a bruise on her collarbone. He grabbed me by the throat and told me if I ever talked about the lawsuit again, he'd ruin me. Maya felt cold fury settle in her stomach. Did you take pictures? Yes, and I saved all his threatening texts. And Jenna pulled a USB drive from her purse. I have the unedited security footage from the practice field incident. Brandon's dad had someone edited, but Brandon kept a copy of the original on his laptop. He likes to watch it, to remind himself why he hates you. Maya stared at the USB drive. How did you get this? I stole it. This morning, before school. I know his passwords. Jenna pushed it across the table. I want to help you. I want to testify. I don't care about the pictures anymore. He's already posted them, sent them to half the football team last night because he was mad at me. So I have nothing left to lose. Jenna, don't tell me I'm brave. I'm not. I should have done this months ago. Years ago. I watched him hurt people, and I did nothing because I was scared. But you weren't scared. You fought back. And now I want to fight too. Maya picked up the USB drive, the small piece of plastic suddenly heavy with possibility. This was it, the evidence that could prove everything. Brandon's initial attack. His harassment. The truth that had been edited away. We need to get this to my uncle immediately, Maya said. I'll drive you. Right now. They gathered their things and headed for the exit, but as they passed the main office, Principal Harris's door opened. He stepped out, looking even more nervous than usual, and locked eyes with Maya. Miss Richardson. Miss Walsh. My office, now. It wasn't a request. They exchanged glances but followed him inside. The office felt smaller than before, more oppressive. Principal Harris closed the door and sat heavily behind his desk. I'm going to cut to the chase, girls. I know what you're planning. He looked at the USB drive in Maya's hand. And I'm asking you, begging you not to do this. Not to tell the truth. Maya asked. Not to destroy this school's reputation. Not to turn what should be a private matter between students into a federal case. Do you have any idea what this lawsuit is going to do to us? To our funding, our accreditation, our ability to attract good students? His voice cracked slightly. I've worked here for 20 years. This school is my life. And it's my future, Maya countered. The future you were willing to take away from me to protect the bully. I was trying to protect everyone. Do you think I wanted this? I've been getting death threats, Maya. Parents calling for my resignation. The school board breathing down my neck. He ran his hands through his thinning hair. I made mistakes. I admit that. But if you drop this lawsuit, if you both agree to transfer quietly to other schools, I can make this go away. Fresh starts for everyone. Let me make sure I understand, Maya said slowly. You want us to give up our education, leave our school, abandon our friends, and let Brandon Mitchell face zero consequences for years of bullying and assault. And in exchange, you'll make sure your reputation stays intact. When she put it like that, Principal Harris had the grace to look ashamed. But he pressed on anyway. I can't offer you much, but I can offer you this. I'll write you both glowing recommendations for your transfer schools. I'll personally make sure your transcripts reflect only the good. And Maya, I'll have the district pay for your first semester at whatever college you choose. That's more than you get from winning the lawsuit. Jenna spoke up for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. No, Principal Harris blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I'm done protecting men who hurt people. I'm done being quiet. And I'm definitely done helping the school cover up its failures. She stood up. Come on, Maya, we have somewhere to be. They walked out of the office together, leaving Principal Harris staring after them in shock. Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest, not quite friendship, but solidarity. Recognition that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stand beside someone else who was being brave. That felt good, Jenna said as they pushed through the main doors into the parking lot. It felt right. Maya corrected. They drove to her uncle's office and Jenna's BMW, the USB drive sitting between them like a loaded gun. When they walked in, Martin Richardson took one look at their faces and immediately ushered them into a conference room. Talk, he said. Maya handed him the drive. Unedited security footage from the practice field. Shows everything. Martin plugged it into his laptop, and they watched in silence as the video played. Every moment was captured in perfect clarity. Brandon grabbing Maya first. Him pushing Jenna. His aggressive approach. Maya's measured, defensive responses. The obvious disparity between his aggression and her restraint. When it was over, Martin leaned back in his chair and smiled. The sharp, predatory smile of a lawyer who'd just been handed a winning case on a silver platter. Ladies, he said, do you know what this is? Evidence? Maya guessed this is a tactical nuke. This video doesn't just prove your case, it destroys theirs. Brandon's lawyers will have no choice but to settle, probably for a significant amount. The school district will have to implement new anti-bullying policies and oversight. Principal Harris will likely be forced to resign. He looked at Jenna. And you, Miss Walsh, just became the star witness in a federal civil rights case. Jenna nodded, looking terrified but determined. I'm ready. Whatever it takes. Martin began typing rapidly, already drafting the motions to introduce the new evidence. I'm going to file this today. By tomorrow morning, every major news outlet in Virginia will have a copy. This is going to be big. Maya felt the weight of what they were about to do settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every student who'd ever been bullied and not believed. Every victim who'd been blamed for their own victimization. Every system that protected powerful people at the expense of vulnerable ones. Do it, she said. Her uncle looked up from his laptop. You sure? Once this goes public, there's no going back. I'm sure. Then let's bring them down. As they left the office an hour later, Maya's phone exploded with notifications. The story had already leaked the preview of the bombshell that was coming tomorrow. #Justice for Maya was trending nationally now. News vans were reportedly outside Lincoln High. Someone had started a crowdfunding campaign to support her legal. fees that had already raised $30,000. The war was no longer being fought in shadows and hallways. It was out in the open now, visible to everyone. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Maya Richardson wasn't fighting alone. The fallout was swift and merciless. By Friday morning, the full video had been released to the media. Local news stations played it on loop. National outlets picked up the story. The internet, that great amplifier of both justice and outrage, had latched onto Maya's case with the fury of a million keyboard warriors who finally had a clear villain to target. Brandon Mitchell's social media accounts were flooded with hate. His college recruitment offers were being reconsidered, according to carefully worded statements from university athletic departments. Judge Mitchell released a statement expressing deep concern and promising to get to the bottom of this matter. Lawyer speak for beginning the process of distancing himself from his son's actions. Lincoln. I was in chaos. Parents were demanding accountability. Students were walking out in protest. The school board had called an emergency meeting to address the allegations of systemic discrimination and inadequate response to bullying. Maya watched it all unfold from the relative safety of her apartment, her uncle having advised her to stay home until things calmed down. She sat on the couch next to her mother, both of them staring at the television as a reporter stood outside Lincoln High's main entrance. The question everyone is asking, the reporter said into her microphone, is how this situation was allowed to escalate for so long. Sources inside the school say the complaints about Brandon Mitchell's behavior date back years. Yet no substantial disciplinary action was ever taken. Elena Richardson reached over and took her daughter's hand. I'm proud of you, baby. Scared for you, but proud. I'm scared too, Maya admitted, but less scared than I was before. Her phone rang. Her Uncle Martin. She answered on speaker. Turn to channel 7, he said without preamble. Now, they changed the channel to find a breaking news banner. Federal investigation expanded. Multiple students come forward with allegations against Lincoln High athlete. What's happening? Maya asked. What's happening? Martin said, and she could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Is that you opened the floodgates. 14 other students have contacted my office in the past 24 hours. All of them have stories about Brandon Mitchell. Some about other athletes, too. The Department of Education is now investigating the entire athletic department and the administration's handling of complaints. On the TV, a lawyer who wasn't her uncle was giving a press conference. Behind him stood 6 students Maya recognized from school, their faces carefully blurred for privacy. We represent multiple victims of systematic harassment, discrimination, and violence at Lincoln High School, the lawyer was saying. Today, we are announcing our intention to join the existing lawsuit and to pursue both civil and, where applicable, criminal charges against the perpetrators and the institutions that enabled them. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. These other students had just been waiting for someone to go first, to show them that fighting back was possible. Maya? Her uncle's voice brought her attention back to the phone. I'm going to need you to be strong for what comes next. This is going to trial. Brandon's father is fighting the settlement. He thinks he can still win in court. It's going to be ugly and public and exhausting. I'm ready. Good. Because I just got word that Brandon's legal team plans to argue that you used excessive and unreasonable force and that you were the true aggressor. They're going to try to paint you as a violent, angry black girl who overreacted to normal teenage conflict. Maya felt her mother's hand tighten around hers. Let them try, Maya said quietly. I have the truth. And now I have 14 other people backing it up. That's my girl. Get some rest this weekend. Monday, we prepare for war. After he hung up, Maya and her mother sat in silence, watching the news cycle continue to dissect every aspect of the case. There would be more reporters, more scrutiny, more attempts to tear her down. But there would also be justice, real, tangible justice. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. My parents are making me transfer schools. They don't want me involved in a lawsuit, but I already gave my deposition. My testimony is on record. He can't hurt either of us anymore. Another text followed. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. I wish I'd been brave sooner. Maya typed back, you're being brave now. That's what matters. She set her phone down and leaned against her mother, feeling the exhaustion of the past weeks finally catching up with her. She'd been running on adrenaline and righteous anger. And now that the immediate battle was over, now that the lawsuit was filed, the evidence was public, and the world was finally watching, she could feel the toll it had taken. You need to sleep. Baby, her mother said softly. I need to finish my calculus homework first. I'm still a student. Elena laughed a real, genuine laugh that made her sound years younger. Your calculus homework can wait one more day. You just changed the world, Maya. You can take the evening off. But Maya was already pulling her backpack toward her, fishing out her slightly damp textbook. Changing the world is important, she said. But so is maintaining my GPA. I still have a college scholarship to earn. Because that was the thing Brandon Mitchell had never understood. Maya Richardson wasn't fighting him because she hated him or because she wanted revenge. She was fighting him because she refused to let him steal her future. She opened her textbook to the chapter on derivatives and began to work through the problems, occasionally glancing up at the TV where her story, her truth, was being told, and retold to an audience of millions. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Monday would bring the beginning of a long legal battle. But tonight, Maya Richardson was just a 17-year-old girl doing her homework, proving that no amount of bullying, discrimination, or systemic injustice could take away the most powerful thing she possessed, her determination to succeed. Brandon Mitchell had pushed her into the mud during a storm, thinking it would break her. Instead, it had revealed who she really was, not a victim, not a charity case, not someone's target, but a warrior with a black belt in more than just martial arts. She had a black belt in resilience, in courage, in the kind of strength that came not from putting others down, but from refusing to stay down yourself. And that, Maya thought as she worked through another calculus problem, was the most powerful weapon of all.